They were trying to turn our pain into their gain. So we were both shocked and outraged that they would demand this much of God's money.
Why did you never come forward with this before this alleged extortion attempt?
Well, Joanie and I wanted to have plenty of time to heal. We wanted to have a track record of living right and doing right. Plus, our children were young, and we wanted to spare them the pain of this until they could at least be old enough to be able to handle it better.
Welcome back, brothers and sisters in the Lord. I'm really glad you're here. So today, we're diving into something that a lot of people have tried to keep quiet, especially over at Daystar. We've been doing some serious digging, and what we found might surprise you. It's about Joanie Lamb and an interview that she and her husband Marcus Lamb once did. One they've tried really hard to hide. It was buried under years of cover-ups and damage control. But we're bringing it back up to the surface. Let's talk about Marcus Lamb for a second. He wasn't just a preacher. He was also a husband, a businessman, and someone a lot of people looked up to. But here's the hard truth. He wasn't perfect. In fact, he made some huge mistakes. For 7 years, he was secretly involved with another woman. And not just any woman, a married woman. Can you imagine carrying a secret like that for that long? Eventually, it all came out. The truth always does, right? But instead of being honest and taking full responsibility, Marcus tried to flip the story. I still remember watching him on TV, and it honestly felt a little unreal. He stood there in front of everyone, not to fully own up to the cheating, but to say he was a victim of a blackmail attempt. According to him, someone was trying to get $7.5 million in what he called God's money to stay quiet. It became more about the money than the years of betrayal. More about the scandal than the pain it caused. That moment said a lot. And while he and Joanie were trying to do damage control, they were also busy covering up other scandals happening inside Daystar. It wasn't just one issue. It was multiple things being swept under the rug to protect their image, to make sure people still saw them as polished and holy and untouchable. But behind closed doors, things looked very different. What really gets me is that Marcus wasn't just making mistakes. He was living a double life. And Joanie? Well, now there are questions about how much she knew and what role she played in covering it all up. That's why this old interview, they tried to hide matters. It shows us pieces of the story they didn't want us to see. There's more coming, and we'll be unpacking it piece by piece. Because the truth matters. And people deserve to know what really happened. So stay tuned, because we're just getting started.
The couple says 3 people threatened to go public with the affair if the ministry didn't pay them $7.5 million.
Let's talk about the extortion first. Can you tell us when you were first approached and how you were approached? Did you get a phone call? Was it an email, a letter? How?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, the information came to us. They were trying to turn our pain into their gain. So we were both shocked and outraged that they would demand this much of God's money.
Lamb is feeding to these media outlets, including Good Morning America and Ms. Roberts. Oh, they're trying to extort me. They're extorting me, all right. So Roberts says, let's talk about the extortion. She's going with his narrative. Oh, she's a journalist, all right. Can you tell us when you were first approached and how you were approached? Now, please listen very closely. Did you get a phone call? Was it in an email, a letter? How? In other words, Marcus, how did you find out that these people are trying to extort you? Email, phone call, letter, how? Marcus Lamb dodged the question.
Tell us when you were first approached and how you were approached. Did you get a phone call? Was it an email, a letter? How?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, the information came to us.
Evidently, he did not want the viewers to, and I'm just reading from the lawsuit that alleges what I'm entertainment opinion looking at, viewers to learn that the supposed extortion took place in a meeting with 2 of Daystar's lawyers in their office, and that the person communicating the supposed threat was not the 3 supposed extortionists, but a licensed attorney with 29 years of experience and a spotless record. Instead of answering the question, Marcus Lamb said, well, a couple of weeks ago, the information came to us that these 3 people were demanding $7.5 million in order to keep from going to the media. This, I'm reading from the lawsuit that alleges these things that I'm opining about for entertainment purposes. The statement was false and defamatory. Segment concluded with Miss Roberts asking, and Marcus, the final question about the extortion case. She's full blown, but and why wouldn't they? This was really pretty smart on the part of Marcus and Joanie, because, all right, it's finally going to come out what they've been covering up. And they're going to have to deal with it one way or another, but they want to spin it in a way that is to their advantage. And so they concoct it. This is my opinion, entertainment. So they concoct this way of dealing with it. And of course, the secular media is going to pick up with the secular media loves a Christian in sin story. They love that. So of course, they're going to give it to them. And then they're spoon feeding the narrative that they want them to go for. And I'm sorry, maybe they paid this Ms. Roberts off and the network off, or maybe she just fell for all of that. But anyway, obviously, he had led her to believe that the identities and location of the three supposed extortionists were unknown and that a manhunt was underway. See, Marcus Lamb is making them think these three people are out there somewhere and they're trying to extort us. Nobody knows who they are, but we're going to find them. I called the law. I called the sheriff. I called the sheriff of Boone County, and he's coming down and he's going to. But that was a lie. He knew exactly who they were. He knew exactly who these individuals were and why they had gotten in contact. And it wasn't to extort. It was to have things made right after they had been wronged. He knew who they were, and he knew who their attorney was because the attorney had met with them on their premises.
All right, let's talk about something that really doesn't sit right. And the more you look into it, the more questions it raises. So, Marcus Lamb, co-founder of Daystar, once stood up and claimed that three people tried to extort $7.5 million from him and the network. He said it loud and clear, like he was a victim of some big plot. But the more you dig into it, the more it starts to feel like things don't really add up. So let's break it down together. Here's what actually happened. 3 former employees filed a lawsuit against Daystar. Not just rumors. This was a real legal battle. And when you read the details of what these people went through, especially the second person in that group, the story takes a turn that really makes you wonder what the truth is. So, let's focus on her for a minute. This woman worked at Daystar for 8 years, from 2002 to 2010. That's not a short time. She was a producer of The Joanie Show, which means she worked super closely with Joanie Lamb the whole time. She wasn't just some part-time intern or someone in the background. She was front and center in the ministry, helping make their content and shows happen. Now here's where things get shady. After years of hard work, she was suddenly fired. And not for anything like breaking the law or doing something wild on the job. No, she was fired for dating another employee. Yep, you heard that right. She lost her job because she was in a relationship. That's it. Now, you might think, well, maybe that was a company rule. But if that were the case, wouldn't it apply to both people in the relationship? That's the crazy part. The guy she was dating, he got to keep his job. No suspension, no write-up, no firing. Nothing happened to him. Meanwhile, she was publicly humiliated, yelled at, put down, and then let go by Joanie Lamb herself. So we have to ask, why the double standard? Why was the woman punished and not the man? And how does that line up with what Marcus Lamb was saying? He claimed this was all some plot to take money from the ministry. But when you look at stories like this, it starts to look more like people were being mistreated and pushed out and then labeled as troublemakers when they spoke up. That's not justice. That's not how leadership in a church or ministry should work. And it definitely doesn't reflect the values they claim to stand for. At the end of the day, this isn't just about one woman losing her job. It's about the bigger pattern. People being silenced, mistreated, and then blamed when they finally had the courage to speak up. So yeah, maybe we should be questioning Marcus's version of events. Maybe it's time we stop blindly trusting what's said from the pulpit and start looking a little deeper. Because the truth matters, and it deserves to be heard.
Here's what the court document says. She was the producer of The Joanie Show, a production starring Joanie Lamb. Throughout her employment, plaintiff worked closely with Joanie Lamb, who was her direct supervisor the entire time she was employed by Daystar. During the course of plaintiff's employment, plaintiff began to date a male employee of Daystar. The relationship was not prohibited by any policy of Daystar. On January 11th, 2010, Joanie Lamb instructed plaintiff to terminate her relationship with the other employee. For approximately 2 hours, allegedly, Joanie Lamb berated, belittled, and harassed plaintiff. Joanie Lamb told plaintiff that she had shamed both Daystar and Joanie Lamb, called plaintiff a liar and a bad example, and told plaintiff she was unhealthy. Joanie Lamb also asked the plaintiff explicit and inappropriate questions about her relationship with the other employee. No one at Daystar made any such demand of the male employee whom the plaintiff was dating. Now, Daystar deliberately humiliated the plaintiff. She was subject to numerous instances of verbal abuse and insults, some of which were directly related to her gender. On March 10th, 2010, plaintiff was fired without lawful excuse. The male employee whom plaintiff had been dating was neither demoted nor terminated as a result of his relationship with plaintiff.
Imagine you're a lawyer and your client just got fired from her job, not because she stole anything, not because she broke company rules, not even because she did something inappropriate on the clock. Nope. She got fired for dating someone she worked with. Now here's the kicker. The guy she was dating, he kept his job. No warning, no write-up, no nothing. Just business as usual for him. But she got scolded, embarrassed, and kicked out the door. Now tell me, how is that fair? You don't need a law degree to see the problem with that. It's not just wrong, it's unjust. And if you're her attorney, you're absolutely going to take that to court. That's not extortion. That's called standing up for your client's rights. But Marcus Lamb didn't see it that way. He went on TV, told the world that these people were just trying to get money, $7.5 million to be exact. He said it was a setup, a scam. But was it really? Here's where things get even messier. Around the same time, multiple sources were already claiming that Marcus had been having an affair for 6 or 7 years with a married woman. That's not some random gossip. It's something that's been reported again and again. So let's be real for a second. If you're being sued for unfair treatment at work, and the person suing you is saying there's a pattern of unfair behavior and double standards, yeah, your personal life is going to come up. That's not blackmail. That's called evidence. Let's say it like it is. How can you justify firing a woman for dating a co-worker when the head of the entire ministry was allegedly involved in a long-term affair and still kept his position of power? That's a huge double standard. It's one rule for them and a totally different rule for everyone else. And that's what people were upset about. The lawsuit wasn't just about money. It was about being mistreated. It was about hypocrisy. And it was about someone finally saying, enough is enough. So no, this wasn't about blackmail. It wasn't about extortion. It was about people who had the courage to speak up after being treated unfairly by people in power. People who were supposed to lead with integrity and honesty, especially in a Christian ministry. At the end of the day, what's right is right. And if we're going to claim to follow Jesus, the one who flipped tables when people were being taken advantage of, then we have to be willing to call out the mess, even when it's uncomfortable, because truth matters. And people deserve to be treated with respect, no matter who they are.
They were trying to turn our pain into their gain. So we were both shocked and outraged that they would demand this much of God's money.
All right, let's just be honest for a second. Marcus Lamb made a big deal out of that $7.5 million. He stood on stage, went on TV, and told everyone that people were trying to steal God's money. But come on, whose money was it really? Let's not forget, that money came straight from regular people. Churchgoers who genuinely believed they were given to something holy. They gave from their hearts, thinking they were supporting ministry, Christian broadcasting, and spreading the message of Jesus. They weren't signing up to fund someone's secret affair. But that's exactly what it looks like happened. While Marcus was preaching about faithfulness, righteousness, and doing the right thing, he was allegedly living a whole double life. Behind the scenes, he was flying out on private trips, not with his wife, but with his mistress. He was booking fancy hotel rooms, spending on lavish getaways, and using money that was supposed to be for God's work to feed his own desires. That's not just disappointing. It's heartbreaking. Imagine being someone who gave your last $50 because you believed in the message of hope he was preaching, only to find out that money might have gone to a hotel suite for a secret relationship. That's not okay. And when it all came out, when the truth finally hit the light, did he take ownership? Did he step up and say, I messed up, I sinned, I let you all down? Not really. Instead, he played the victim card. He went on TV talking about how he was being extorted. He made it sound like he was the one under attack, not the one who broke trust with his audience and his own family. But if we're going to talk about this honestly, and we should, then we have to say what others are afraid to. He didn't just make a mistake. He lived a lie for years while asking people to trust him, follow him, and give to his ministry. That's not a one-time mess-up. That's a lifestyle built on deception. And here's the thing. Nobody expects perfection. We're all human, and we all mess up. But when you're in a place of power, especially spiritual leadership, you've got a bigger responsibility. People look up to you. They believe in you, and they deserve the truth. So know that $7.5 million wasn't just God's money. It was the people's money. It was a tithe from a single mom trying to do the right thing. It was the offering from a teenager believing in something bigger. It was sacred, and it should have been treated that way. What happened wasn't just a scandal. It was a betrayal. And it's okay to call it what it is.
Why did you never come forward with this before this alleged extortion attempt?
Well, Joanie and I wanted to have plenty of time to heal. We wanted to have a track record of living right and doing right. Plus, our children were young, and we wanted to spare them the pain of this until they could at least be old enough to be able to handle it better.
How'd you find out?
There was an individual that cared about me and cared about him that had some information where they believed that this could be going on, and they came to me and shared the information with me, and I confronted him the same day.
And you knew this woman?
Yes.
Most married women, they know. They can feel it when their husband is cheating. When a husband starts acting different, more secretive, less present, dodging eye contact, it doesn't take long for pieces to start falling into place. And Joanie Lamb, she's not just any wife. She's smart. She's strong. She's been in leadership roles, handled a major network, and worked side by side with her husband for years. So are we really supposed to believe she had no idea Marcus was having an affair for 7 years? Come on. Now, to be fair, even if she did know, what could she really do about it? When you're living that big, polished televangelist lifestyle, walking away isn't just about leaving your marriage. It's about risking your entire image, your career, and your platform. Joanie wasn't just Marcus's wife. She was his partner in business, his co-host on Daystar, and one half of the shiny power couple that millions of people tuned in to see. Their brand wasn't just about faith. It was about perfection, about selling this dream of a flawless Christian marriage. And let's be real, that dream brought in millions. We're talking private jets, huge homes, designer clothes, and a lifestyle most people only see in movies. But all of it was built on one thing, the image of a happy, holy couple who had it all together. So what did Joanie do? She did what a lot of people in her position would do. She played along. She smiled on camera. She prayed with Marcus. She held his hand during interviews. She acted like everything was fine, even when it probably wasn't. Because in that world, keeping the ministry's reputation spotless was more important than speaking her truth. But think about how hard that must have been. Imagine knowing your husband has been unfaithful, but having to sit beside him on national TV like it's all good. Imagine defending him publicly when you're still hurting privately. Imagine having to keep quiet while the world whispers about your marriage, your character, and your faith. That's not just painful, that's exhausting. And here's where things get even more interesting. Now that Marcus is gone, Doug Weiss steps in. And let's not pretend he's some stranger who just showed up after fact. Doug already knew about Marcus's affair. He wasn't just a guest. He was Joanie's emotional support while she was going through the worst betrayal of her life. He saw the cracks behind the scenes. He knew what Marcus had done. And now, Doug's right there next to Joanie. On camera, at events, in interviews. And he's not shy about throwing little jabs, sarcastic, subtle digs about Marcus. And Joanie, she lets it happen. She doesn't stop him. Sometimes she even smiles. It's like, in her own quiet way, she's getting her payback. Maybe this is her season of finally having someone who supports her. Maybe this is her way of reclaiming power after years of pretending everything was perfect. Or maybe it's just the next act in a very public story that's still unfolding. Whatever it is, one thing for sure, this is not the end of the story. Not for Joanie, not for Daystar, and definitely not for the truth.
Rachel did say that I did tell her I would ask you in this meeting. She said that when y'all went to the Easter service, I don't know know where it happened, but she said that you said to Joanie offered you Marcus's necktie, and you said to Joanie, "I've taken everything else that man has. I don't want his tie." And y'all started laughing, but it's like a.
What did you say? I don't want the time. I don't want anything from you. I don't want your inheritance. It's kind of the heart of that.
No, I understand, but when you're saying I've taken everything else that man has.
He's just a joke. He's talking about me.
I figured you're talking about you.
You didn't have to have the tie. He was talking about me.
You ever hear someone say something and just feel your whole face twist like, wait, did they really just say that? Yeah, that was me the first time I heard Doug Weiss's comment. It hit me in a weird way. Like, seriously, how do you say something like that out loud and not realize how off it sounds? I don't know if he was trying to be funny or what, but either way, there's something deeper behind those words. And honestly, it just doesn't sit right. Let's break this down a bit. Doug Weiss isn't just doing guest appearances or filling in once in a while. He's co-hosting full-on TV shows now with Joanie Lamb. Yes, the same Joanie who was married to Marcus Lamb, the man who basically built Daystar from the ground up. For years, Marcus and Joanie were the faces of that whole network. They were the power couple of Christian television. And now, that spot beside Joanie, it's Doug. And it's not just the shows. Doug's also showing up more in Joanie's personal life. The two of them are working closely, sitting side by side, sharing stories, talking about relationships and healing and faith, all the things Marcus used to do. In a lot of ways, Doug has stepped right into the role Marcus left behind. Whether professionally or personally, it feels like he's taken over both. Now here's the part that really gets to me. Instead of approaching that with a little humility, like, hey, this is a delicate space I'm stepping into, Doug decides to crack a joke about it. And not just any joke. One that kind of brushes off the fact that he's now filling the shoes of a man who literally just passed away not that long ago. And Joanie? She doesn't flinch. She just goes along with it. That's the part that stings. Because there's so much emotion wrapped up in this whole situation. There's grief. There's betrayal. There's healing that still needs to happen. And when you make light of something that heavy, it shows a lack of understanding, or maybe a lack of care. Look, I'm not saying Doug's a villain here. Maybe he really believes he's helping. Maybe he thinks he's offering support and stepping into a role God called him to. But let's be honest, timing matters, and so does tone. When people are still processing everything that went down, Marcus's scandal, his death, the aftermath, jokes don't land well. Not in a space that's supposed to be about ministry, restoration, and truth. This whole thing just leaves me wondering, what's really going on behind the scenes? Is this about healing and helping people, or is it about power, influence, and keeping the Daystar machine running? We may never know all the details, but something about this just doesn't feel right. And honestly, we should be paying attention.
There's people fly from all over the country for the last 30 years. And I sat with marriages, thousands, 5,000 marriages. And there's some that die right there in my office. They die right there. Okay? Because it can't be done. It can't always be done. God doesn't always raise the dead.
Me too.
God doesn't always heal. God doesn't always heal somebody. God didn't heal your dad. God doesn't always...
So let's talk about something that's been bothering a lot of people. Doug Weiss's comment about God not healing Marcus Lamb. Now, I get the point he was trying to make. Really, I do. Sometimes God doesn't heal. Sometimes, even when we pray with all our hearts, the answer is still no. That's real life, and it's part of faith. We don't always get the miracle we're hoping for. But how you say that matters. When you say it matters. And who you're saying it about matters even more. So when Doug stood there and basically said, God didn't heal your dad, in front of a grieving family and an audience still hurting over Marcus's death, it just felt cold. Like, really cold. It wasn't just a casual comment. It felt like a gut punch. Imagine sitting there, still processing the loss of someone you loved, and someone says that in public, as if it's just a lesson or a teaching point. That's not ministry. That's not compassion. That's just harsh. Even if Doug's intention wasn't to be mean, the way he said it lacked sensitivity. There's a way to talk about tough truths in love, with care. You can say, God doesn't always answer prayers the way we want, without dragging someone's dad into it, especially someone who was such a big part of the very ministry you're now standing in. And here's another thing. Doug isn't just some random guest. He's now co-hosting shows with Joanie Lamb, Marcus's widow. So for him to talk about Marcus like that, so directly, so bluntly in front of her, it crosses a line. Whether you realize it or not, it sounded more like a shot than a sermon. It makes you stop and think, Was that about honoring God, or was it about making a point at someone else's expense? And then there's this line he added. Lust is wanting something that God has not given to you. Now, in theory, yeah, that's a fair definition. But in this context, it hits different. Is he hinting at Marcus's past? Is he making a statement about the affair? Because if he is, that's even more inappropriate. These aren't just theological statements anymore. They're personal jabs dressed up as spiritual wisdom. Here's the thing. Truth should never come without love. You can't teach people about God's power or his decisions without showing some kind of empathy, especially when you're talking to a family that's already gone through so much. This wasn't just about Marcus Lamb as a public figure. This was a father, a husband, a friend. People are still healing.